Hi guys, welcome to your podcast on controls and variables. Super easy material today. We're just going to go over the basics, and that's identifying the three types of variables that you find in an experiment. So first of all, our objectives are going to be students will learn to identify independent and dependent variables, and students will learn to identify controls. Those are the three variables that we're going to be looking at. You're going to be given a series of experiments, and you're going to be able to pull out the independent, the dependent, and the controls in these experiments. And this is a crucial skill because this could appear on the EOC, in which they ask you one of the three or all of the three. They might ask you to critique an experiment to say what are some ways you could improve it, and they might be looking for you to imply that one of the variables needs help or needs assistance or something is wrong with one of the variables. So these are very important information, not just for biology but for all of science. These are all necessary for good experiments. So let's begin. The first type of variable that we're going to cover is the independent variable. Right? It's something that is changed by the scientist. It's what's being tested, it's what's being manipulated, it's what's being changed. It's what I change in an experiment. The independent variable, I did that for a reason. I change the independent variable. It's what I change in an experiment. It's the whole point. It's, hey, I think I should give my dog food B as opposed to dog food A. What have I changed? I've changed the dog food I'm giving my pet. All right? I am changing the independent variable. I am causing this change. That's what the independent variable is something that goes into something to be changed or causes a change. All right? The independent variable is what I change. As long as you remember that, you will always be able to pick out the independent variable. It's what you or I change in an experiment. Okay? The next variable is the dependent variable. The dependent variable depends on the independent variable. It's the output. So it's something that might be affected by the change in the independent variable. It's what is observed. It's what is measured. Usually this is a very important way of picking out the dependent variable. Is it's usually talked about being measured. It's the data that we collect. Remember we talked about qualitative and quantitative. The dependent variable is our data that we collect. It could be measured, it could just be observed. Those are our outputs. Okay? So the independent variable is what I change in an experiment. The dependent variable is the information that I gather from that change. Right? The third final variable that we're going to talk about is the controlled variable. It's a variable that is not changed. These are also called constants. All right? I'll elaborate a little more on this at another time, but basically when you have an experiment going on, you want to treat the groups, the experimental groups and the control groups exactly the same. You don't want to give, one flower more sunlight than the other. You don't want to give some people doing weight loss pills, you don't want to sabotage them by giving them donuts or a free buffet coupon. You want to keep them all exactly the same as much as possible. That's the purpose of controls. You want to try to see if a new shampoo works. You make sure everybody uses the same amount. You make sure everybody uses the same temperature of water. You've got to check for these things. These are called controls. They are what make a fair experiment, and we'll talk more about this a little later. All right, now that you know the three variables, independent is what I change. Dependent variable is what depends on the change, is what we measure. And then the control, these are factors that have to stay the same for a fair experiment. Let's look at a few examples. Firstly, students of different ages were given the same jigsaw puzzle to put together. They were timed to see how long it took to finish the puzzle. Okay, so take a moment, let's think about it. I went ahead and helped you on this one first because I highlighted some of the major points. But let's talk about the independent, dependent, and controlled variable. First of all, identify the variables in the investigation. What do you think the independent variable was? What did I change or the scientist change in the experiment? The ages of the students. We had different ages of the students take this test. Different ages. I had Billy, who's in 2nd grade. I had Jimmy, who's in 4th grade. I had Sarah, who's in 7th grade. The age differences was the independent variable. It's what I changed. All right, that's what I was testing. I changed this in the experiment. What about the dependent variable? What are we measuring? What are we measuring here? Kind of gave it away right there. Good. The time it took to put the puzzle together. That's what we were measuring. The time was observed and measured by the scientists. All right? The time depended on what I did in the beginning. Okay? The dependent variable is what's measured or observed. And the final one, can you think of what the control was? Can you think of what had to stay the same? Good. We had the same puzzle. I'm not going to give a 2nd grader a 4-piece puzzle and give a 9th grader a 100-piece puzzle and call it fair. That's not what I'm worried about. That would make the experiment super unfair, and we want to keep it as fair as possible. So the same puzzle was very important. Okay? Excellent. Let's look at another one. An investigation was done with an electromagnetic system made from a battery and wire wrapped around a nail. Different sizes of nails were used. The number of paper clips the electromagnetic could pick up was measured. Okay? So there were a few key words there, and let's look at it. What was our independent variable? What was I changing in this experiment? Independent variable was the sizes of the nails. I was changing the sizes of the nails. Different sizes of nails. That's what I was doing. I was changing the nails in this experiment, the sizes. All right, what was my dependent variable? What were we measuring? What were we collecting data on? The number of paper clips picked up by the different sized nails. Good. And what was my control? It may not have been as easy to recognize this one, but you would want to keep the battery, the wire, and the type of nail the same. You wouldn't want to, get a different type of nail where it has a different molecule, different not chemicals, but different elements made up, or different have a different. What am I looking for? I don't even know what I'm saying. You know what I mean. All right. So there we go. Let's do another. The higher the temperature of water, the faster an egg will boil. The higher the temperature of water, the faster an egg will boil. Okay, what's my independent variable? What am I measuring? And what is my control? The higher the temperature of water, the faster an egg will boil. All right, my independent variable is the temperature of water. I am the one raising the temperature of water. What am I measuring? My dependent variable is the time it took to cook the egg. And what is my control? The type of egg, probably, or the same pan, or using the same liquids. I don't want to choose different types of water, like salt water versus distilled water. I want to keep them all basically the same. Okay, good. One more. Promise. The temperature of water was measured at different depths of a pond. The temperature of water was measured at different depths of the pond. So basically, the further you go down in a pond, body of water, you're going to measure the temperature as you go down. So what's my independent variable? What am I changing in this experiment? The independent variable is the depth of water. I am the one changing, going down, all the way down, and measuring the temperature. So what is my dependent variable? The temperature. It's what I'm measuring as I go down. And the control is probably, we want to use the same thermometer, and we also want to make sure we're in the same body of water. All right. Okay. You can design your own investigation. Just like with this hypothesis right here, the farther a ball drops, the higher it will bounce. You should be able to design your own investigation, your own hypothesis by using your variables. What will be changed? How can we do this? What will be my dependent variable? What are some controls? So on and so forth. So I hope this podcast has helped you with independent variables, dependent variables, and controls. The important thing to remember is independent is what I change. Dependent is what's measured. It's what I'm getting from this experiment. It's the data. And the control variable is what we keep the same in the experiment to make it fair. Okay? I hope you guys have an awesome day. That was your podcast.